Hello and welcome to the Giant Talk podcast, brought to you by both There Be Giants and Momentous. If you've tuned in before, you'll notice we're having a bit of an upgrade. Previously, Giant Talk has been about all things OKRs, but now our focus is expanding to how strategy can be connected to results in all types of organisations. Our back catalogue is still available, so if you want to check that out for more detailed OKR episodes, then you'll find what you need there. In the meantime, Roger and James are delighted that you're here, and if you want to contact us, you can drop us a note at growth@therebegiants.com. Enjoy.
Hello folks, I'm Roger.
And I'm James.
And we're the co-hosts of the New and Improved Giant Talk podcast. If you didn't get to catch our first little episode when we introduced ourselves and shared how Giant Talk is changing and evolving, then have no fear. The biggest difference is that we're teaming up with the aim of creating even more engaging, insightful, and dare I say, provocative conversations with some really, really interesting people. We're going for quality over quantity, so we're aiming for about one episode per month, and we're really excited to see how it all evolves. Joining us here today, we have someone we've both known for a number of years, and as we wanted to get a strong start to our new season, we don't doubt for a second that he's going to bring some great insights. So let us welcome Ian Turner.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me on.
Fantastic. How you doing today, Ian?
I am good, very good indeed. Slightly cooler now.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We're recording this start of June, and here in the UK, we're thinking we probably just had our summer last week. Really? The weather has all turned. Right, that's the good old British bit of the weather done. We're okay now. We're safe. Ian, I'd like to dive straight in. You've worked for a number of well-known organisations through your career. Can you tell us, kind of briefly, a bit around what was your role? What was the role you played across them?
So it's always been in an HR capacity. Very, very human-centric, I call it. So there's lots of stuff around HR and being for the business and commercial, and that's absolutely critical. But how do you bring the human side to it all? How do you engage people? How do you motivate them? How do you drive them, etc.? So all across my roles, there's been a big theme across financial services, .com, telco, higher education, number of different sectors. But the common thread through all of that has been, how do you maximise the performance of individuals?
Okay, interesting. So maximising the performance of individuals. If you reflect back on some of those roles you had, is it fair to say there might have been a mix where you went in to accomplish something new and different? Were you there to fix something that wasn't working? Was it a mixture of both?
Mixture of everything, really. Yeah. So I think there's obviously over the far too many years to call out, but over my career, there's been lots of transitions as marketplaces have moved, as workplaces have evolved. So lots of transformation pieces in there. Some elements of going in and fixing it, and that's clearly a hearts and minds piece as well. But then sometimes it's actually starting it from scratch and building something really high performing that's really exciting as well.
Okay.
And I'm curious, Ian, do you have a particular style or approach that you take when you're, in particular, you were talking about transformation there. That brings with it a lot of change, a lot of turbulence, a lot of uncertainty. So it requires some really good, strong leadership, both from yourselves and obviously the wider leadership team. So is there a particular sort of style or approach that you take through that?
Yeah, and I suppose it's a bit cliche to call it human-centered leadership, but that's essentially what it is. So yes, you might drive the strategy, yes, you might drive the change or the transformation, but I try and take hierarchy out of it, and I try and always imagine what are the people on the receiving end of this going through? Because if you just do it on my terms, then I might think it's landed, but I've missed the trick over with the people. So I've got to really understand what's going on in their minds, what's going on in their world, where are the opportunities, where are the fears that they've got. And then we can really draft the comms in the right way, because the communication part of it is usually the element where it falls over. So if you can get that bit right and understand where the business needs to go to, where the people are at right now, you can actually really build quite a compelling transformation journey for people that actually gets them excited as opposed to resisting.
Okay.
And an interesting part of that you just mentioned around kind of seeing where you wanted the organisation to get to, getting people behind that journey, and a lot of people love moving towards new exciting stuff. They see the future you're painting, and they're compelled to move forward. But some people, they don't. It sounds great, but they kind of like life where it is now. It feels stable and steady. So, what were you seeing in some of those organisations? What were some of the indicators, either tangibly or intangibly, that painted the picture that there was discomfort, there was pain, there was problems?
I think you just hit the nail on the head there. It's really kind of, some people don't like change. Some people thrive on it, and they're easy to bring on the journey. You've got those people that have maybe at a stage in their life, a stage in their career where they're just going, I just quite like just doing what I'm doing for the rest of my days. Thank you very much. Well, actually, sometimes you've got to paint the picture of the world's changing. Your role is, if I put a talent lens on it, it's almost a declining role. That role will be phased out or changed over time. So at that point then, those are some of the things that I hear. Why do we need to change? I don't like change. I'll look elsewhere if I'm going to do it. So you've got to then talk to them about how do you bring them on that journey? How do you make it not scary? We'll support, we'll train, retrain, whatever it's going to be, and take the fear out of it. Because actually, that's the supportive way of bringing the people on the journey. And it's great for the organisation because you're retaining talent. The alternative, really, and you have to be transparent about this, the reality is that role might not exist in the next 12 months. And we want to retain you, so let's come on this journey together. Some people will still vote with their feet, and that's probably right for them and probably right for the organisation at that point. But as long as that communication is transparent, then that's really the best that you can hope for.
There's an authenticity around that because, I suppose, being honest, not from the point of view of putting fear into them, but being realistic. The one thing we can't avoid is change. And like you say, the role might not exist in 12 months' time.
Yeah,
okay.
I have a mantra that always says I bring this in across my HR employee relations bits or HR from a transformation perspective. The one thing I always say is no surprises. And that's the one thing I always stick to on this one. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody where their role is declining and in 12 months it's not there, if I avoid that conversation and try and say, oh, it'll all be all right, and then in 12 months' time, we're sitting there having a really awkward conversation about maybe a redundancy or something, then that's totally unfair. If I've been up front 12 months ahead and said, look, this is the way the market's going, come on this other journey with us and we'll support you, we'll guide you and we'll help you, surely that's got to be a better conversation for all parties.
So you touched upon human-centered leadership, okay, and can you just unpack that a little bit more for us in terms of what it means for you and how you have practiced it and perhaps encourage those that you work with to practice it?
Yeah, I think this comes from a place of, without good people, you haven't got a business, full stop. So you've got to look after the people. And I've seen, and I've done it, I've fallen down the trap in the past of generic reward for argument's sake. And in the olden days, it might be going, right, I'm going to buy everyone a bottle of wine. Aren't I good? I've given something back to my team or whatever it's going to be. Where I've seen it work really well is I've seen managers, and I'd like to say this was me, but it wasn't. It was another manager that I worked with. They really understood the individuals in their team. And there was one individual, obviously I won't name names, but single parent, struggling, on the breadline kind of thing with finances. And the manager at that point, they had a young son, massive Man United fan, bless him. But they bought, instead of buying a bottle of wine or something that was a bit generic for everybody in the team, they bought as a reward the new Man United shirt for that individual son. Now, that is just one example of something that took loyalty, engagement, performance light years on and a token gesture. And that all came back to the fact of that manager understood exactly what that person was about and what was motivating them and what challenges they were facing. So that's a really small thing, but makes massive differences. So if you scale that across an organisation and you understand the fact that we're in a cost of living crisis, that's going to impact people in different ways. They've got different stuff going on. The other thing I say at the moment is that the days of people leaving their troubles at the office door when they come in and picking them up on the way out, that's BS, if I'm being completely honest. There is stuff going on in everybody's lives that is going to impact their performance. And as a leader, if you can be, you don't have to fix it for them, but if you have to be conscious of it and meet people where they're at, whether it be on reward, whether it be on flexibility, whether it be on the change, whatever it's going to be, you will be a much more effective leader and retain talent and develop talent in a much faster, more authentic way than if you just treat this as a generic program.
So empathy is massive there, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. So where does, and it's a really interesting point that you say, gone are the days where we can leave, home stuff at the door, it does spill over. But where's the point at which, empathy becomes tolerating lower standards or underperformance? Surely there's a line there somewhere.
There is, and as a leader, that's where you've got to be really clear on the outcomes that you're driving as an organisation and as a team and as an individual. So, I can sit down there and say, look, I'm going to be fair with you. We've got to deliver these outcomes. And this is really where I suppose when we had some success with the OKRs was, here's the outcomes that I'm looking for you to deliver. I'm not telling you how to do it, when to do it, but I need to deliver these outcomes by this time. And as long as that individual is doing everything they can to deliver those outcomes for you, the degree of flex that you can put in, the reward that you can overlay it with, etc. But that becomes the contract between the two of you at that point. I'll give you this support. I'll give you this flexibility. I'll give you pretty much what you need in order to be able to do that. But in turn, I'm looking for you to still deliver these outcomes for me. If it goes the other way, the needle goes completely the wrong way, and it's all about more sympathy than empathy, for example, and you let things just slide, that's the slippery slope to be on, because then that's a one-way agreement then at that point. And you will have to have that outcome delivery as part of the agreement. And that's the red line, if you like.
And I think the bit there is your level of empathy and discretion might be different from those of your peers, the other senior leaders, and there's got to be that consistency and it can hear it from you and know from knowing about you how passionate you are about getting this right, about this kind of human-centric and human-centered leadership. But what kind of challenges did you have getting your peer group on board, getting the senior leaders of the organisations on board, particularly those who might have had other targets, other pressures that they were chasing and they were pushing their teams for?
An interesting one, because you get some people that are very traditional. This is how we lead people. You give them tasks and you hold them to account and blah, blah. And then you come in particularly as an HR leader, coming in talking about human-centred leadership. Yeah. They'll go, here we go, here's the fluffy stuff, here's the people stuff. And you've got to be able to then back that up with, but we're delivering the outcomes that we need. In fact, we're exceeding the outcomes we need because I'm bringing this philosophy to play. And that's why, just mentioning then, that red line around these outcomes have still got to be delivered is super crucial, because you're still holding it down, you're just doing it in a more human way. So yeah, I have had people say to me before, "Oh, you're just being, you're on the side of the people. You're not bothered about the business." Absolutely wrong. It is all about delivering for the customer, for the business, but through your people, and how you do that is that. And equally, you mentioned that as well, James. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter leadership. But the way that I do it, and Roger used the word authentic before, the way that I do it is my authentic way. I wouldn't expect you, James, or you, Roger, to do it in exactly the same kind of way. But the cultural kind of approach is that we respect individuals as individuals, and we do what we can to get the maximum performance from them that drives the business.
So what comments would you have in relation to the announcement from, or the statement rather, from the CEO of Standard Chartered when they were downsizing by 8,000 in the past couple of weeks ago, and he described them as lower value human capital?
I'm trying not to swear. That is probably one of the most disrespectful comments I think a CEO should do. And in my view, probably shouldn't be the CEO of a large organisation like that, because who would want to work? Let's just put it down to the three of us here. Who would want to work for a person that just treats people like that? Nah. And that would drive a whole load of attrition over time. You'll end up with the wrong people in the organisation, and it's a really worrying leadership stance to take that. I think that is appalling.
It's so transactional, isn't it? And it just completely, in terms of respect for your workforce. Yeah. I mean, to be fair to the guy, he did withdraw the comments. He backtracked on them and apologised. But the question is, has the damage been done by that point?
Yeah, totally. And I'm a big believer of people like to join winning teams, and I would like to think that people would want to join my team because I treat them as humans, I treat them as individuals, and we deliver on all of our outcomes, and we're a high-performing team. So why would you not want to join that team with a boss who respects you, that's delivering really good value for the organisation, and we're really high-performing, as opposed to, we're delivering loads of profit to the bottom line, but I'm treated as a low-value individual. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer, but each to their own, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, taking that as a very real example. You think, if you're in that shadow of a leader, and that's whether withdrawn or not, that's the kind of thing that's being said or messaged, communicated, and then board senior leadership teams are then trying to do this great stuff that you've been telling us about, Ian. Just what a challenge that represents when you want to do some good things. You want to invest in your people. You want to change the organisation. You've got some great OKRs in place that are really going to do that and drive some brilliant change. But right at the top, there's a different message.
And that's the bit that's gone public, that statement. So if it's at a point where it's gone public, that's probably been said in the boardroom and in senior leadership meetings for months. So it's not a case of it was a slip of the tongue and we'll do it, or that will be the perception of many people anyway. Put it that way. And it drives a culture, and people are selective about where they go and work now. The latest generations into the workplace are very purpose led. Yeah, they'll be selective. And do you know what? When you've got a CEO or a senior leader talking in those terms, that is an instant turn right. I'm going to go over here and look over here for a role. I'm not going to look into that organisation. And that creates a real talent gap and a succession gap in the future. And actually, if I was probably their main competitors right now, I'd be over-indexing on the other messaging.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We value our people.
Yeah.
And
we're winning.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting because he seemed to use that term quite, naturally, quite, seemed to be quite acceptable. So one wonders whether that, as you say, been a term that's been quite commonplace at that level in the organisation, and so isn't just reflective of his view, but is maybe reflective more of senior leadership's view. Full stop. You see this normalization, don't you? Sometimes of certain phrases, words, thinking, and because the peers are all saying it and thinking it and in the same way, that validates it at a senior level. But then that's the detachment, isn't it, between that seniority and the rest of the organisation sometimes.
It is, and I might be being completely unfair to the individual in question here when I say they should be a CEO. But this is the danger with comms. Okay, if that individual genuinely believes that they're lower value individuals, then no, I stick to my guns and they shouldn't be a CEO. If it was something that was misinterpreted, came out wrong, or whatever, for the conversation we've just had, it's out there. So again, as a leader, you've got to think about the words that you use really carefully, because if he doesn't think it, there are many, many people right across the world right now that think he does. And the fact he's just withdrawn it as opposed to, this is really what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I imagine their PR team is working overtime at the moment.
Yeah.
Thank for it.
So, you mentioned the term a couple of times, kind of in passing, but I'd like to just dig into it a little bit more because OKRs are my game anyway, and I'm curious to see to understand if you think that OKRs can be used to help encourage, enable, embed any of those for the human-centered practices that you've talked about. What's your experience? What's your view?
So I think totally they do, and I think one of the biggest challenges that I've probably seen across, say, many years of kind of leading people and working with organisations, one of the biggest challenges that people say is that the teams are trying to boil the ocean. They're trying to do too much. I've worked in organisations that at one point had 26 priorities. You kind of go, that doesn't compute. So people are trying to be super busy delivering on lots and lots and lots of things and trying to boil the ocean, and then they feel probably very little sense of progress because they're doing a bit of each and things aren't moving on and they don't feel valued or they don't feel that they're adding any purpose to the organisation. Whereas if you do the OKRs in the right way and you focus on, these are the 2 or 3 things that are really going to change the needle on the organisation, and not only that, but this is how you're contributing to that, then it gives them permission to really focus in on what matters rather than trying to do everything, and they see how it contributes to my team, to my function, to the organisation. And again, that's the bit that really hooks people, that I'm not overworked and not really delivering anything. I'm really focused and I see the difference it's making.
Yeah, I mean, I know the thing. This particular model's been around for a good few years now, but it still always comes back to it. You remember Dan Pink's work from about 15 years ago, and he was looking at the new motivations. I'm sure this is very much your bag, isn't it, James? And he came up with, I always remember the acronym PAM: purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And what you've just described there, Ian, is obviously the link to purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, but again, the autonomy bit in there as well with the OKRs is you're not just going, here's a list of tasks to deliver these 2 or 3 things. I'm going to you and saying, I value your input, I value your experience, all the things that I hired you for, I'm glad for them. Here's an outcome we need to do. Let's work together on this. And you might have different ideas that are better than the other people. So then we can actually then all hook in and get behind that. So you get that mastery, you get the autonomy because you can think for yourself about how you do it. And then your purpose is, well, we're driving this for the organisation. So it hits every single one of those sectors.
Yeah, and there's in the world of motivation, there's lots of different schools of thoughts of motivation, of, just deep emotionally driven motivations that drive us as humans in our work life, our home life, our social life, and so on. But in the workplace, there's the healthy factors of motivation around praise and recognition as well. And just I think you've just kind of mentioned there, Ian, just being recognised and thanked for doing a good job, and obviously feeling like you're being rewarded in the right way for the job that you do. But those 3 things, that purpose, autonomy, and the mastery, for me, they need the leaders to be. It's about caring. It's about knowing the individuals to say, what are you here for? Why do you want to be in this organisation? Why do you want to be doing what you do? How does that align to why we're here as an organisation? And how do I show my trust in you, give you that autonomy, delegate, create opportunities. It takes you on that route to mastery and career growth and career progression. But that's got to be the attitude of the leaders. And it kind of goes back to what we just kind of talked around a few minutes ago of that has to be the culture, has to be that leadership culture to say this is how we want to bring the best out in our people by having the right things in place, but by knowing them, knowing what they're about.
Totally. And I think if you look at success on a very binary level of did we achieve the outcome or did we not, you miss so much insight into individuals. Because if I'm sitting down with a group of people, cross-functionally ideally, and we might miss the outcome by the deadline. We might actually miss it. Let's call it out. But actually, throughout that process, I'm seeing individuals make changes on the fly. I'm seeing them solve critical problems. I'm seeing the way that they bring teams together. Then actually, all the way through that process, I'm seeing the talents of the individuals all the way through it. So yes, we might have missed the actual outcome, but I'm seeing the way the team, and that can go into the next quarter and the next quarter, and you really hone in on those talents, but you call them out as well. You recognise them in the weekly catch-ups, and that then means that people are saying, I feel valued for this. I know I'm good at this now. I'm going to really play to my strengths. And that's all of that just snowballs into high performance if you deal with it in the right way.
So when you've tried to take this human-centered approach and try to encourage your colleagues to do the same, what barriers, what challenges have you experienced in this, and how did you work around them or overcome them?
If I'm totally honest, I've not come across a whole load of barriers to it, other than the bit that I called out earlier on around sometimes people think you're just being, the people person, and that's what you're there to do and not everybody else is. I suppose one, and again, small things, but they really matter, is sometimes, I've gone out to teams and I'm like, so what do you think the answer is? And they kind of sit there for a minute or two and go, well, aren't you supposed to know that because you're the leader of this project or this team or whatever? And usually that's because previous managers or whatever have just gone in and given the answers and said, go away and do it. Here's what you need to do to fix this, just go away and do it. And they've never had that thrown back to them to go, well, come on, you're a smart person. We hired you for these skills and these capabilities. You've got some ideas. So that's usually early doors, a challenge that we've had. Probably one other thing that comes to mind is we did a different style of team meeting many years ago, where, and this taps back into that human bit a little bit as well. So if you imagine a team meeting, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, a leader goes in with the agenda. Go in with, this is what I want to get across to you. This is what I need to communicate to you. Thanks very much. We're all done. Move on. We did a thing in the past where we just go, right, as a leader, we used to call it a listen. But this was, I'm going to come in as the manager of this project or of this team and go, right, what do you want to talk about? Flip it completely. And actually, at first, there was the tumbleweed about what? I don't know. What do I want to talk about? The weather? Yeah. But over time, if you set the right sort of safety guidelines in there, you hear so much. Well, I want to talk about, I'm getting really mixed messages about the prioritization. I'm not feeling valued, or I've got this going on that's conflicting with this. All that stuff's happening. You were just unaware of it because you went in with your agenda and just went, I'm going to offload all of this. So actually flipping some of those meetings onto, what do you guys want to talk about?
And I think adding to that, adding another layer to say, I'm here to lead us and guide us and listen, as you said. This is our meeting. I want you to run the meeting. I've got some things I want to share with you, but you run the meeting. You take it in turns as my leadership team, as my team. Rotate chair role of the meeting, put the agenda together, just make sure I've got a 20-minute slot to share the things I need to share, and the rest is your agenda.
100%. 100%. You unearth so much.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. But also the other thing, so just one final thing probably to mention on that as well is, when we've delivered something, wherever possible, I will, if I'm going into might be a senior leadership meeting, it might even be a board meeting or whatever, I might bring the person who's brought all that change in and delivered it. I'm going to go, you tell them what you've done.
Yeah.
Don't let me take all the credit for it or all the flack for it. You know, if it's gone disastrously wrong, that's usually down to the leader. So, not set the right conditions, and you should go in and face that. But if it's been a roaring success and someone's been instrumental in changing the direction of something, I'm not going to sit there and say, look, aren't I a great leader? Look what I did. You know, all things being equal, I'm going to bring that individual in and go, the floor is yours. You tell everybody what you've done and give them that platform. And again, sometimes that's scary for individuals. They go, well, hang on a minute. I'm not ready for that. But again, I have another mantra of mine is I will never put you in a position where you will fail.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying to you, you're ready to go in and tell the board about how you were brilliant at doing that, A, you're ready for it. B, I'm right next to you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Good things that give people the opportunity, I think, and you know, we would just step out the way and let them have their light. I'm interested because there's a lot of good things we talked about here of mindset, practice, some techniques, and so on. So what did it result in? What did you see? What did you see that showed that a difference was being made, that human-centric leadership was starting to form? You're seeing some outcomes, and whether that's tangibly, intangibly, what would have looked or felt different?
Probably the first thing that I really kind of felt different was the team would come to me with options. You know, there's the old adage, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. Well, actually, they were coming to me saying, I've highlighted this, and I think this is how we can go about it. So that's number one, rather than just literally coming to you going, you know, product A is on fire. But the other thing was, over time, there was a real trust built that was, I didn't micromanage the team about where they were. If they weren't sat at their desk at 9 o'clock, I didn't even give it a thought.
Yep.
Because A, I know that if something was seriously wrong, they'd ring me. Number two is I implicitly trusted them that they would still deliver. And they might have had a child who's had a tantrum on the way into school and it's took them 20 minutes to calm them down and get them through the door at school. That's fine. That happens in life. Get on with it. They rock up at 9:30. I know they're still going to deliver for me. So I noticed that there was a real adult, there was a real trust formed in the team. And performance was going up, and things were really, and people in other teams were talking about the team in really positive ways. I think that was a kind of an external validation of what was going on. But even now that I'm not in that organisation, I've still got members of that team that I count as friends now, but they will still ring me up sometimes and go, I just want to run this past you. And you're like, brilliant, I love that, because they trust me to be open and honest with them and that kind of thing. They obviously respect kind of me as a leader, and that's validation for me as a leader. And it feels nice. Let's not wishy-washy here. That feels nice as a leader when you've got people who really trust you and value you and want to work with you. That feels good as an individual as well. So it's not about everybody else. All of this makes you feel good as a leader as well, right? So it's good for your career. It's good for your whatever.
Yeah. And how do you maintain that? How do you stop it being a short-term success on the back of some great work and some great collaboration and some great conversations? How do you keep it embedded? How do you help it stick?
I keep the stretch on. That's my style. I will always go, what's next? And that can be an overplayed strength sometimes, don't get me wrong. People, that can drive a little bit of fatigue sometimes. But if you speak to anyone in my previous teams, they will all laugh if I say, Ian's got an opportunity for you. Because I always used to position it in that way. And it just became a bit of a standing joke. But I'd come in, right, I've got an opportunity for you. We're going to stretch it. We're going to take the bar to the next level. We've got something completely out of left field to go after. And just by... and this takes time. Again, it's back to that trust bit. They know that I wouldn't ever put them in a situation where they would fail. And they know that I'll be backing them. They'll know that I'm there for them if they need anything. But actually, I'm also stretching them and pushing them because that's great for their career, for their platform, whatever. This again comes from my human bit. If I see members of my team going on to be doing bigger and better things in the future, I feel great. It's a bit like being a parent in that respect, isn't it? That kind of way. Get your value from seeing them grow.
What I'm hearing is an absence of ego, to be honest. Because there are a number of leaders that I've encountered and that you can only just, look at the news and see plenty of examples of where they would put people in a position where they'd fail because it would actually make them look good. It's about keeping people down for them, whereas you're about helping people up, I think, is probably the way to frame it. Just a kind of a reflection, I suppose.
I suppose my slight comeback on that is I think everybody's got an ego. It's just there's an inflection point in it. If your ego is driven by more altruistic, like I said, I've got an ego. But my ego comes from I like to feel that I'm adding value to people. I like to be able to tell people I've helped people. Yeah, as opposed to what you're describing there is a really power-centric ego.
Yes,
that's destructive.
Yes, exactly. So, you've taken this approach. It's been your default style for many years. If you were to be in a position again where perhaps you're going through a transformation program, I'm sure you've got plenty of those ahead still for you in your career. Is there anything you'd do slightly differently next time based upon, learnings, experiences, insights from what you've gained so far?
There will always be stuff I'd do differently. I think I kind of touched on this a little bit before. Probably one of my overplayed strengths is when I see momentum gaining, I see that trust building, I see the team coming together. I'm probably guilty at times of trying to do too much. Put the pedal down, go faster. Let's keep doing it. And that's great for a short period, but it's not always sustainable because the team just get worn out by that. And again, back to that trust bit. I've had teams in the past that just go, have a day off, Ian. Yeah, just can we just slow can we have a week where we just kind of catch our breath a little bit before you go and do it? And I, as soon as somebody says that, I recognise it in myself, and I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. So I think that's probably something that I would be super conscious of. Is I know that I thrive in that fast pace. And I get a sense of fulfillment, enjoyment, the adrenaline. I love all of that, but that doesn't work for everybody. So they can do it, but it's like a sprinter. They'll do the 100 meters and they need a couple of days rest, and then they can sprint again. Let's just keep that.
Absolutely. That's a big that was a big principle that kind of guided my work in my early years of running the business, because I was doing quite a lot of work in sport at that point, working a lot with quite elite athletes, and I was really taken by how seriously they took their downtime as much as they did their uptime, because they knew if they didn't, then the quality of their uptime would be lower. And yeah, so that making sure that they, all right, yes, they were very focused on diet and rest and so on and so forth. And I'm not suggesting that you have to have the, the ultra focus that they had on those things, but it is about making sure that when you do have that downtime, that it is recharging you. Yeah. absolutely. In whatever way recharges you.
And it's intentional.
Yes.
But you've got to build it into your processes.
Yeah.
Make it intentional and consistent that you have that downtime. Well, so I suppose you can't pour from an empty cup kind of approach, isn't it?
Exactly.
So you've got to, that's one thing I consciously do. I love the adrenaline. I love the let's deliver. Looking back over 12 months and saying, I've delivered all of this stuff. Well, that's a little bit where maybe the ego can come in sometimes, because actually you go, oh, look at Ian, he's great, he's delivered all this stuff through his team. And you look behind me and my team are all collapsed out on the floor. That's not a good leader. So, yeah, intentionally and consistently building in that downtime, that reflection. Can't go 100 mile an hour all the time. And I'm sure there'll be members of my team listening to this going, oh, he's learned. Took a while.
Got it.
Oh God! Yeah. Right. If I may, with kind of like an in summary question, because I think this could be a nice way to kind of wrap it up. So when you observe a leader or a leadership team who claim to be human-centered in their approach, what are the behaviours that you see that tell you that they actually mean it? That what proves to you that actually mean it? And then I'm going to flip it and be curious to hear about the ones that reveal that they don't.
Good question. Right. So it comes down to that authenticity bit. I think that, they can. I've seen leaders that talk about it, say really good things and say all the right things, but then they leave the all hands meeting, they leave the team meeting or whatever, and they go back into their offices, their boardroom, and all of a sudden they come out with statements like we heard earlier on, or they just drive people. They've got people there till 7 o'clock at night every night. They're bringing people in on weekend. They're literally flogging them to death. Then I'm going, well, clearly there's a mismatch at that point. You're saying we're a people-led organisation, and yet you're literally flogging them. And you don't allow any degree of flexibility. For example, you talked about maybe provocative earlier on, Roger. I think for me, when I see this 5 days return to the office mandating, then, I'm not saying every single organisation that does that is not a people organisation. That would be wrong to say. But what's their reasons behind it? I've seen it work really well from a human-centred, where they've got a lot of early careers people in there, and actually the development of those individuals is better for them and for the organisation when they're surrounded by peers all day, every day, and that learning happens really well. That's a 5 day week in the office, good thing in some respects, if that's the environment you're in. If it's because we trust everyone, we're a people organisation, but I want to see you working every single day, and I want you 5 days in the office, when there's a cost of living crisis, when there's no real validation data behind it, then I question, that's not an authentic leadership approach at that point. That's one example.
Right. Interesting. Okay. All right. That's great. Ian, really fantastic insights that you've shared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No. Did you say me or Ian? Sorry.
Sorry, I said you, James.
Yeah. Me. Yes. Anything I'd like to add? I think for listeners and watchers, viewers, the key thing is what Ian has shared about the observations, what you see in people, what you don't see in people, but also the results, and just seeing, what are we seeing in terms of people's productivity, their attendance? Are we hitting our results? Look at those measures, look at and get a sense of the feeling of the organisation, and then kind of open up your mind to all this great stuff that Ian has shared around human-centered leadership. The signs will be there, and then there's some great learnings that Ian shared with us of what to do and how to start that journey and how to keep it going.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ian, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in, either listened to us or watched us. We look forward to bringing you yet another episode of Giant Talk in the next few weeks. So stay tuned.